The Ute Indians, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
This week's program on Channel 12 is brought to you as a public service by a grant from the Ute City Bank. Also supporting community television in Aspen this week is the Squash Blossom of Aspen and Vail, Colorado.
I'm John Smith of Grassroots Network. A few years ago, Peggy Clifford and I did a book about Aspen. Aspen Dreams and Dilemmas dealt with the past and the future of the community, but only a paragraph was devoted to the Indians who occupied this valley for hundreds and perhaps thousands of years before the celebrated white men arrived. Most of us, including myself, are woefully ignorant of where and how the Utes lived in the Roaring Fork Valley. The only obvious traces are a few place names: Ute Cemetery, Ute City Bank, Ute Avenue. I spent a week roaming the backcountry with a portable video camera, seeking out those who had some knowledge of the Indians, their artifacts, and their pattern of life here. We found some amazing things. An Indian horse corral that may be hundreds of years old and is still standing. Mysterious breastworks created by stacking up volcanic stones. A Folsom Point that could place man in this valley somewhere between 12 and 30,000 years ago. This is in no way a historical study of the Utes. It was clear from the beginning of this project that even among scientists, there is a hazy line between fact and conjecture when it comes to local Indian history. In my view, what you're really going to see is a human document of some very remarkable people, many of them old-timers, who've taken a very personal interest in recognizing and preserving a fascinating piece of our perishable past. First, I'd like you to meet John Gooding, an anthropology teacher at the Rocky Mountain School at Carbondale. John took me to an Indian camp a few miles south of the campus.
I'm sitting here on a campsite that was in all probability used by the Ute Indians sometime in the last 200 years. There's not much to it, and there isn't much left of it, but by looking around and rummaging through what you can find, we might be able to learn a little bit about the Ute Indians and the way they lived in this valley. Anthropologists consider the Ute Indians to be part of the Great Basin, or the desert culture group of Indians that lived mostly in Utah and western Colorado. The Great Basin Indians were linguistic relatives, or shirt-tail relatives, of those Indians, those prehistoric Indians we know of as the Anasazi, who are the ancestors of the Hopi. As to the earliest history we have of the Utes, there's very little information, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding that. There are some people that believe that the Utes actually migrated north into the mountains here and were nomadic in and out of them. There are other people who seem to believe that the Utes spent many centuries here and changed and developed into what we know of them at white contact.
North of the Rocky Mountain School is Red Bluff, or Red Hill. Here is a passage taken from Roaring Fork Valley, a book by Len Shoemaker. In the 1890s, a favorite form of recreation of the young folks of Setank and Carbondale was a trip to White Hill, or Red Hill, north of the Roaring Fork. Colored beads, arrowheads, and other artifacts left by the Indians could still be found. On Red Hill, directly north of the present Setank, there was a stone barricade on its southernmost crest which had been built by the Utes. According to an unconfirmed rumor prevalent at the time, a small hunting party of Utes was attacked at the White Hill camp by a large number of Arapahoes. The Utes retreated to Red Hill, entrenched themselves, and held the enemy at bay until help arrived, when the Arapahoes were defeated and put to flight. Len Shoemaker, who also wrote Pioneers of the Roaring Fork, is 92 today. We found him in a nursing home in Glenwood Springs. Len was a forest ranger for many years, and he came to Aspen on foot in 1885. We asked him to tell us about that trip.
I remember pretty well when we came over the pass. I was a little chafer, you know. And when we got up and looked down, looking down from the Taylor Pass into the, I guess Castle Creek is the name of the stream that you go down into. It looked awfully bad and awfully steep. And my mother said, I'm not going to ride down that road, I'm going to walk. So she got off and walked behind the road. And she took me off, and I remember walking around in where the wagon tracks where there was running water because there was still thawing, you know. And pretty soon she got tired of looking along with me, and she just picked me up and took me on her back, pickaback as she called it. And she carried me all the way down from the top of the Taylor Pass to the old town of Ashcroft. And it was quite a trip. I can remember when we found an anthill that would be full of little Indian beads, for instance, and when we went out into areas where the Indians had been living and carrying on their ordinary life, we found arrowheads and some things like that. I remember one time I was quite peeved. We were climbing up Aspen Mountain, some of those fellows, and a fellow reached down and picked up a little stone hatchet. And he said to one of the boys, do you want that? He said, no. And he said, do you want it? And I said, no. And he just slammed it down the hill as far as he could throw it. The thing would be worth $100 now, maybe $1,000, you know. It was just a perfect little stone hatchet, you know.
In this entire territory that they occupied, in all likelihood there were never more than 3,000 souls. So in fact the Utes were never a large tribe. They were terrifically nomadic. They moved around this territory constantly. Therefore, the impact of the Utes on this valley was probably minimal. By minimal, I mean For most of the time, there perhaps were never more than 2 or at the most 3 dozen individuals in one location. But the Roaring Fork Valley does offer a tremendous variety of raw materials which the Utes could have utilized. A lot of very nice places that I'm sure they really appreciated. You can begin in the Glenwood Springs area and find dozens of places from Glenwood Springs to the town site of Independence.
In Glenwood Springs, we visited Mrs. Lena Urquhart Dose, a historian who has written several books and articles about Colorado history.
Here we are at the upper structure of the old Ute vapor caves at the west end of Glenwood Canyon. The Utes knew the value of the healing waters long before white men came to this valley, and they used these caves. However, the ones that they used are now under the railroad track, and this is all that is left. Chief Uray was brought here with an illness and healed. The manner of healing was to put them on a platform, lower them into the steam cave, and seal them off for a certain length of time, which the Utes knew how long they should stay in there, and bring them out. And it's rather frightening to think that there were no lights, no way of escape, but this was the method they used, and it was very effective. Water level of the river, they built the Mahogan, and from there was crawl space back into their cave. The first white men were very welcome to use it and did bathe in the Indian caves. However, as time went on, they wanted a cave of their own, and here is where the white man built his cave, also entered by a crawl space. Also, this is the upper structure. The basic understructure is now under the railroad track, and the entrance was down at the edge of the Colorado River.
The Utes are what we call hunter-gatherers. They hunted the natural, they hunted the elk and the deer and the other wild game of the valley, but they did not live strictly on the game. There are numerous berries and natural vegetables that are quite edible throughout the summer. I believe that in all likelihood the Utes did not winter in the valley. There is the possibility of such a great snow accumulation that even at medium altitudes in the valley one could be snowed in, such as Missouri Heights. The Missouri Heights region is the location of several old sites, but the Missouri Heights region can become quite deep in snow. Techniques of hunting game were very well refined. They understood the animals they were hunting. They had to. They weren't using 30-30s. They were using darts with atlatls or spear throwers, and they were using bow and arrows. And
for 33 years, Bob Tyrrell was a game warden in this district. John Gooding and I talked with him in his backyard in Basalt.
Here's one right here.
all of those are from the valley?
No, not all of them. This one right there.
Oh, with a really fine serrated edge.
Yeah, that's moss agate. That's local. I was setting a fox trap, and I dug down. I was using a trowel, and I dug down about 4 or 5 inches. Yeah. Dug it up in my boy Dale, he was sitting there, and he said, "Well, look at here," and picked her right up.
Boy, that's really finely worked.
I don't know how it ever got there, but
yeah, it's nice.
There's quite a few local ones in here. Now here's a local one. I found that thing down on 4 Mile Creek, there where that old schoolhouse used to sit. And it was just laying there, and there's kind of an old camp right there. But now all this black stuff, or the biggest end of this black stuff from Mexico, and there's one little black one. Let's see, we'd been up on Capitol Creek, right here. I'd set a bear trap up there, and we was on our way back, and the kid's shoe come untied. So I stopped the shoe. He was just a little guy, about 5, and having a hard time keeping up. So we stopped so I could tie his shoe, and I was laying right at his toe.
It sure is small, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I just get a kick out of going out and hunting them, but when I find an arrowhead, it ain't just the finding it where I really get the big whiz. It's I sit down and I think about everything connected with it, about, what type of person was it that made that arrowhead, and what was it used for, and did it ever take any lives, or, there's a lot to think about. There's a lot of these that I found, I found them on Maroon Creek, and I found them up on Gold Hill, and I found them in Independence Pass, and I found them up here in the head of the Frying Pan, and I'm just on Cattle Creek and Cottonwood Pass, and I just found them everywhere. But it's getting hard to pick them out anymore. I thought. I found that on Independence Pass.
Oh, really?
So I decided that it was, I found 2 up there that day. And how I happened to find them, I hadn't thought about Indians. I wasn't looking for Indians. I'd been checking fishermen all day. And so I went up on top there to eat my lunch, and I had a guy come along. I was visiting with him, and I had a hard-boiled egg, and I was peeling it, and I just throwing that egg out there on a rock, or the shell, and a piece of it missed the rock, and it almost hit the head. And I couldn't believe my eyes. There laid a fine arrowhead. Now that other one is a lot like this, real pretty yellow looking, real uniform. But you see, I thought I'd get smart and fix that and see I'd ground a little on it.
Yeah.
But boy, you got to leave them like you are. If they're broken, well, don't mess with them, because you ruin them. The same. This here's a Colorado deal, and if I'm not mistaken, I found that up on Maroon Creek, just after you cross the Maroon Creek Bridge and turn to the right and go up there. And there's a spear that we found that same day, and it could be, I wouldn't doubt it's one of these bigger spears.
Something like this?
Well, that one's a Utah spear there. But it might be in this box of junk. It's a pretty good looking spear. I don't remember where I found that. But I know I had it fixed on a stick make it look like a tomahawk. I had a split stick with pretty rawhide on it.
Hafted on there. Yeah.
So my kid, they was about 8 or 10 years old, those 2 boys, and one of them, he grabbed it and jerked it back, and hollered like an Indian, and it came off and went right through one of those big wings. Boy, so that stopped that old stuff. Once in a while, you find these up here around a camp. Now this here I found out on Cattle Creek, just over north of here, just a thumb scraper.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good place to go. We might even be able to go over there and find an arrowhead. Yeah, I found, I can show you teepee poles and the old rings right now down on, not Rifle Creek, but Mam Creek in south of Rifle. The poles in a lot of trees where they've chopped them with I don't think they had much of an axe, probably a stone axe, but there's several teepee poles that's sticking up in still setting up in the cedars, and And you find a few beads down there, and we found quite a few arrowheads right around in there, probably a dozen, 15.
Yeah, but
You know, there's something funny about this arrowhead hunting. Now, you're not going to believe this, but this is the God's truth. A lot of times, I know ahead of time when I'm going to find an arrowhead. I get a feeling. I get just a little bit before, I get a feeling that tells me something. I don't know what it is, but I get a little feeling that boy, I'm going to find something. And boy, it scares me.
this is the view of Mount Sopris from Ray Hopkins' 3,500-acre spread in Spring Valley. The land was homesteaded by his grandfather in the late 1800s.
This Folsom Point was found over on Cattle Creek. Charlie Renfrey found it. And I happened to be over there one time delivering a bull and stayed for dinner, and I always was told that he had quite an arrowhead collection. And I asked him to see it, and of course I immediately recognized this point because of what I'd read about the thing. He didn't know what he had, and so I eventually talked him into knowing to give it to me.
You talked him out of it, huh?
Talked him out of it.
Could I get you to open that up and hold it up?
Well, let's
Can you get a
see.
shot of it?
Just a moment. Got this locked in here with some tape. Oh, I see it. And went down to Denver, and in the museum down there, out there at City Park, why they had 5 of these. The same color and about as big as that. And the last time I was down there, why they had some 5 perfect ones in there, but all the same color.
That came from off Cattle Creek somewhere, huh?
Yes.
Do you happen to know about how old that might be?
Well, I've been told it's somewhere between 35,000 and 60,000 years old.
Yeah, it's got. Okay, this Folsom Point is characteristic of what are known as Paleo-Indians. This is some of the earliest evidence of man in the New World. Interestingly enough, for the age of the point, the technology that went into manufacturing it is considerably more sophisticated than a lot of the later stuff that you'll find in the United States in terms of Indian stonework or Indian arrowhead manufacture that was much later. Now, to make a Folsom Point takes a lot of work. You can tell how thin it is. Now, the creation of the thinness of this point is the hallmark of what is known as the Folsom Complex. The point.
A little too close.
Okay.
Good.
The point. This is a fragment. The point was perhaps half again, or the full length as long. This is obviously the tip. When it was manufactured out of the chert, the edges were worked down first. I'm not sure if you can pick it up on the camera, but the flaking along the edge is very, very finely worked stone. The flakes are very small. The most difficult point in the manufacture, the most difficult feature in the manufacture of this point is this characteristic flute of the Folsom, which you perhaps can pick up in a shadow that is on both sides, on this side and on this side. Now this flute is the last act in the manufacture of this point. It runs, as you can see, just about 1/4 of an inch from the tip to what would have been all the way down to the base of the point. This flute would have run the entire length of the point, and it is knocked out with one blow. In other words, it is one flake that is knocked out. If you've ever tried to take a piece of rock that thin and knock out a flake the entire length of it, you can probably well imagine how difficult it is.
Jim Quigley, a rancher from Spring Valley, led us to an Indian horse corral he discovered in a stand of cedars.
Noticed that it was the way this things were laid up. They weren't thrown up, they were laid up. It was built down into this little ravine, and there's them little pockets and rocks hold water. They're filled up with mud now, but that's what made me think it was an enclosure for a horse. But
now, who would have built this up?
Oh, the Indians. Because this has been here for, well, 90 years. That the people that homesteaded this place were the first ones that discovered it. And that's been around 90 years ago. Fortunately, nobody ever disturbed it.
How big's the diameter of it, would you say?
Oh, gosh, it's about, 12 foot across maybe, by 14 feet long, something like that.
And it gives access to the water.
Right. And of course, they had a camp right down, there is water right down over the hill, and that's where their camp was. The Indians' tale was that they, when the white men first come here, there wasn't any bison, mountain buffalo left, and they claimed that one winter the snow got two Utes deep. That meant one Ute standing on the other Ute's shoulders. And this cedar country down in here was just alive with buffalo skulls and horns at that time. But they're very rare anymore. But this old man that homesteaded this place in Sherrill, he had a whole china closet full of buffalo horns, real good condition, and skulls that he had picked up, and he had a fire and lost the whole works.
You ever found it?
Found over there on the ranch. Yeah.
This is right out. This is right out in the field.
Right out in the field, yeah, where I was planting grain. I found that thing. I think that's a beautiful specimen of a knife myself. It's as big a one as I've ever seen.
It's as big as one you probably ever will see.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
And I had an old gent from down at Grand Valley who was a collector of Indian artifacts told me that he killed a deer one time, and curiosity led him to skin it with one of these, and he said, you'd be amazed how easy it is to skin a deer with one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't cut the hide like a knife will, but they pull the hide away from the flesh. And he told me he actually skinned a deer. He used a knife to open it up, but he actually skinned it with one of these, and he said, hell, it was far better than a knife.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said this will pull the, I don't know which way they use it, I think this way though, and it pulls the skin right away, the hide right away from the flesh.
I imagine it worked real well.
That's my Bigfoot.
The Bigfoot?
That's it.
Looks like a big piece of rock to
Yeah,
me.
that's what it looks like.
Tell me what you could use it for.
Well, I could use it to tap you on the noggin with and give you a headache. But I think that was a last. I might be wrong, but you know, the Indians had wide feet. They didn't bundle up their toes like we do.
No,
and I really think that was a last, because I found that over on the ranch there too. And I might be wrong, but it looks to me like that it was used.
You think they could probably just stretch the leather over
I think
this?
so. I think they just stretched their moccasin leather over that, and then perhaps sewed it whatever way they sewed them. They no doubt had to sew them up the center somewhere.
Yeah, but that would be a good form. It's got a nice heel on it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it appealed to me, and I picked it up and lugged it home. There it is.
John, does that look like the sort of thing that you've seen before?
Yeah, I've seen specimens of this that weren't quite as good in the museum at Mesa Verde, and
I had a small one, but I don't know what in the world become of it. It's disappeared in the freakish somewhere.
I've never seen one with as high a back on it, and with a good heel like this. A heel like that, well, you could make a muckluck almost with this thing, because it, you could even sew on side supports if you wanted to, and reinforce a muck. Mini lash, you see, they're only thin,
right?
Just little flat pieces like this, but this actually has an ankle to it, which is damn rare.
Well,
We're looking down on Cattle Creek from the breastworks that Bob Terrell discovered. He believes they were constructed by Indians who were using the location as a lookout site or even a fortress.
Well, the reason that I came up here, you take on these high points like this, it makes a good place to set a bobcat trap in this lava formation and in under a cedar tree that way for protection too. And we transplanted a lot of wild turkeys all over the area. Is the reason I was trapping the cats, because they really catch the turkeys. But I just stumbled onto this. It was just a natural, so I came up here. But this was all built up across the front here. But after you catch 4 or 5 big old cats in a place like this, they knock those. Well, you can see how they've knocked these rocks out. There's something sure going on here. I don't think any white man would build that. Now this big one that's away back here on this buck point, it's 4 or 5 times bigger than this, and it kind of runs in a half circle. And it's up that high. It's still standing pretty good. It's a good one. And what it's for, I don't know. Might have been the same thing. Might have lived back in there. There could have been some little fighting went on there, but you'd think you'd find if there'd been white men done this, the Indians were shooting at them, there'd be more flint spliced around here.
Tell us about the location you found up there, what, about Chatsworth?
Chapman Dam. Yeah, I was in there early one spring, just quick as the snow went off, trapping beaver along that main ditch that comes into Chapman Dam. The beaver would shut it off, and we had lots of fish planned in there, and just had to keep the ditch open. And so I was camped there in a tent. So my youngest boy, Dale, was with me. He was about, I don't know, he's 7 or 8, and this was on a Saturday and Sunday. He'd always go with me on days he wasn't in school if he could. And anyway, I was skinning beaver there one afternoon. He was just looking around. He said, "Looky here, Dad," said, "I found an arrowhead." So I got to looking, and we found, I guess we probably found a dozen old rifle bullets, or the empty shells, the casings, and we probably found a good dozen arrowheads. They wasn't all broken, or all good ones. It was probably 2/3 of them broken, but there was broken stuff all around there. So I got to thinking probably what went on was Indians and old beaver trappers probably had it out right there. And just what it looked like to me, because these shells were 44 caliber interchangeable, is what it said on them, and they could either shoot that in an old 6-shooter or their rifle. Either one didn't make any difference. But there's a lot of things went on around the fella just knew about these Indians. They must have been everywhere, because you see sign of them everywhere.
Bob Child lives in the shadow of Haystack Mountain, past St. Benedict Monastery in Old Snowmass.
Actually, I have a very limited knowledge of Indians and the Ute Indians. When we moved to the ranch here, we began to find arrowheads in a very limited number. I found this arrowhead when we were hunting one year on Flat Top Mountain up here. I was following a trail and the arrowhead was lying right on the dirt trail in a very white stone so that it showed up very readily. The boys have found arrowheads in Hardscrabble Lake and on the ranch property here. It's always a very exciting experience to find even a piece of an arrowhead as you visualize what the Indian was doing when he lost the arrowhead. The arrowhead that was found in Hardscrabble Lake, we always imagined an Indian shooting at a deer that was drinking at the lake and missing his shot, being very discouraged that he lost the arrow in the water. The year we found it, the water was low so that the arrowhead was visible. In most years it would not have been found. Our interest in Indians was intensified though when we read Massacre by Marshall Sprague, a story of the Ute Indians and primarily of Chief Ouray. Chief Ouray was, according to Marshall Sprague, was a chief who did not like to follow the normal routes. He would travel from his headquarters in the Compadre near Gunnison to the Roaring Fork River and thence to the Grand River or Colorado River. But he would not follow the normal routes, and in one passage Marshall Sprague mentions that Chief Ouray used to travel a route that took him, that at one point had Capitol Peak on his right and Treasure Mountain on his left. We can only guess that this would have put him near Capitol Lake, and his normal route would have been then to follow the creek down through the ranch and through our property here, and it could have been Chief Ouray himself who shot these arrowheads that we have found. It's a very exciting feeling to think that. There's also on Haystack Mountain trail known as the Ute Trail. I haven't been able to locate it precisely or find any specific artifacts that would indicate that a certain area was part of the trail, but we do know there's something called the Ute Trail, and I think this would indicate that Ouray used to travel across Haystack and then down to the Roaring Fork River.
The next voice you hear will be that of the late Louise Bird during a 1965 interview on KSNO.
I might start in by saying something about the Ute Spring. It was the one around which the first settlers camped. The first 5 men who came to Aspen over the pass walked in, of course. They camped there, and then everybody else who came to the valley stayed there because the fact that there was this spring that had this wonderful, soft, cold water. And in later years, reporters and people who wrote stories about the early Aspen always told about the abundant waters of this spring. And one man even said the noble spring and the magnificent spring. So it must have had a great deal of water in it. And when these people settled there and others came along, they had an agreement that nobody would ever own that spring. When the Durant Tunnel was built, and I think that was in the late 1880s or early 1890s, when they were building this tunnel, they struck a big waterfall about a mile in from the entrance. And this waterfall had an immense fall in the spring when the snow was melting, but always considerable water, because the miners often talked about this, and they didn't drive the tunnel beyond that on account of the fact that they had this waterfall. And in order to keep the tunnel in good condition, a ditch was built along the side of the track on which the ore cars were taken out of the tunnel. And in that way they were never flooded, because I believe there was a ditch on both sides, though I'm not quite sure of that. And after it got out of the tunnel, this water was led by ditches and flumes down the mountain across the land where now the glory hole is, and all this on Original Street.
The Aspen resident that lives closest to what once was Ute Spring is Dean Billings.
Well, we're talking this morning about the Ute Springs. And the location we're standing here now is at the corner of Original Street and Ute Avenue. And right in here is the Glory Hole Park, which was named after the Glory Hole, which was an old stope about the size of the Jerome Hotel down under the ground, 1,500 or so feet, that caved in about 1917, taking with it 2 or 3 carloads of high-grade ore. This Glory Hole used to be a considerable big hole, but the center of it is about where the little pond is, the main part of the pond is in the Glory Hole Park now. And it went almost over to the white building over there, and over here, when I came to town about 1950, there was just one little lane of traffic, which would be just about to the left of where the current pavement is. The rest of it was the hole. And this is the location of it, where we're standing now. Now the Ute Springs, as I understand it, would be right over here, right underneath the Manor House sign. Right in there, when I was first here in the early 50s, I used to tether my horse over here. There was a nice lush swamp, which as far as I know would be the Ute Springs. The water from that Ute Springs, I believe would be still the water that pops up there in the upper part of the Little Nell ski run and disappears and reappears in 2 or 3 places and finally comes out down here and disappears. Sometimes it breaks loose again, as it did last winter during one of the hard freezes, and comes down the road and made a nice little ice age creepage right down here in the road that goes up the mountain. Now with the changes here, you see the buildings have all come in, and some of these things don't show. When they built the manor house, they dug into the bank there on just the other side of the road there, in back of the manor house, and got that channeled in, and where it seeps into the ground or into the sewer, I don't know for sure which. But you don't see much evidence of it here anymore as we used to. It used to be you'd drop in up to halfway up your shin bones over there in the tall grass and the swamp. The old-timers tell me that there used to be a series of springs along the base of the mountain here, this being the main one, but there were a series of several springs that oozed out along the base of the hill here, and we feel sure that this level area in here from probably the graveyard down this way would have been the original Ute campgrounds where the Indians performed. When the Durant mine shaft was cut back into the hill, into the base of the mountain there, apparently it hit the veins and the source of those springs, except this one here that still oozes a little bit. But it apparently cut into the source of that water, because all the water apparently now comes out of the Ute mine, and some of us have piped onto that water and use it domestically now, have been for some years. Ute Avenue here now, I notice in researching the titles on the property, once was called the road, this being the main way into town, and of course the original town was here before Wheeler came in and set up the town site as we now know it, which is called Aspen. It was called Ute City, and this was where it was. The original first houses, cabins, were built right along what they call the road here now.
Special thanks to Linda Maslow for helping editing on this project. If you have a programming idea for Grassroots Network, you're invited to come to our office in the Wheeler Opera House any Thursday at 5 p.m. That's when we do a plan for our future productions. If you would like to support community television in Aspen, your tax-deductible contributions are appreciated. Our address is Box 2006, Aspen. Thank you.
This week's program on Channel 12 is brought to you as a public service by a grant from Ute City Bank. Also supporting community television in Aspen this week is the Squash Blossom of Aspen and Vail, Colorado.